Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Cooking with, we'll call this Cooking with Jen Zen. Um, today it's August 7th. Happy August. And before we get started with cooking, we'll cook together for a short while. I just wanted to give you something to think about. August is here, and maybe take a moment just to notice the shift in the weather, moving from the really hot, humid weather to more of a warm and hot during the days, but cooler at night and in the mornings. And that's very typical of August. I've talked before about Pitta season, which is summer. That's what we're currently in. But as we move towards the fall season, we're moving into Vata season. So August is a very big transitional month in terms of weather and what's going on in the body. It's now a time where we really want to start paying attention to eating more juicier foods, staying hydrated, starting to incorporate soups and stews, and whatnot to give hydration. And of course, eating seasonally is always the best way to find balance for most of us. One of the things for those of you that are following me in the CSA share, you might notice an abundance of squash. Right now it's actually summer squash with the Many Hands Organic Farm. So I'm going to be cooking a lot with that in the next week or so and be posting recipes. And that is going to be part of our recipe tonight. So tonight's recipe is going to be a homemade quinoa meatballs with lemon pesto zoodles. And if you've never heard of zoodles, it's kind of like noodles, except for you use a summer squash. You can use zucchini. I've seen it in the store using, I think it's butternut squash, lots of different vegetables that they now do this with. I know we don't all have a machine to do it. There's a very inexpensive machine called a Vegetti, and it makes the noodles, and you can do different sizes. It's kind of cool. Pretty simple machine. You can get it pretty inexpensive, probably online, or I think I actually picked mine up at Walmart. But you can always buy the zoodles oftentimes in a grocery store. So that's going to be in place of our regular noodles. I know I mentioned that I recently went gluten-free, but beyond that, I'm really just trying to lighten up my diet in terms of combinations of meals, which is a really important thing to understand. And Ayurveda understands very well combinations of food. So tonight's meal, because meatballs can be, or meat can be a little bit heavy, the zoodles is going to add in that lightness quality to help bring a better balance. Summer squash and zucchini are also very just easy to digest. That has a lot of moisture in it, has vitamin C, has some potassium as well, and just really easy to digest. In this time of year, as we're in this transition, our digestive systems, our fires are going to begin to get a little bit stronger, but we still want to keep our foods fairly easy to digest as of right now. So the zoodles only really take between 2 to 3 minutes. I've actually already made the meatballs, which I will pull out of the oven and show you. The recipe will be online along with this video, or I'll send it to you. Here we go. Beautiful tray of meatballs. And what I actually used in these meatballs, and you can do it different ways, is I used half venison and half hamburger as the meat base, but you could always do all hamburger, all venison. You could certainly do this with either ground turkey or ground chicken or other really good options. And because I'm, as I mentioned, been gluten-free, in place of a bread or stuffing or bread crumbs that a lot of people use in their meatballs, I use cooked quinoa. And the important word there is cooked. You want to cook your quinoa before actually making this recipe. You don't want to put it in raw because you need that moisture to cook it. In addition, I have kale, so I use a whole bunch of kale, one full bunch from last week's CSA share. So adding a little bit of extra nutrition there, and then a raw onion. What else did I put in there? Again, I'll have the recipe for you online as you get this video. Some spices. I know I've talked about Hingva stock a couple times. It really looks and smells quite a bit like cumin. So if you don't have Hingva stock, you could use cumin as a bit of a spice in there. And of course, I always use pink Himalayan salt and black pepper in just about everything that I cook. As I turn this water up for the zoodles, I am just going to talk about, so some of us received fennel in our shares this week, for those of you that are following me with shares. We also got Tulsi, and so this afternoon I made a Tulsi fennel tea, which was really, really nice. I highly encourage you, if you haven't tried at least the Tulsi tea, to try that. It's fairly simple. You just boil it in water for 3 to 5 minutes and then let it kind of rest for a bit. And then you've got your tea. And the dogs are busy over there. So, as I mentioned, it only takes about 3 minutes to boil the zoodles. After that, I had some pesto that I made a couple weeks ago from some basil that I grew on my own, and I could put a recipe up for that. Of course, you can always buy pesto, and that's going to go in the noodles after I cook them. And I'm just going to take a slight pause here for a moment. Okay, I'm back. My apologies for the dogs barking in the background. Took care of that. So my water's almost up to boil. Just to talk about a couple other things while we're waiting for that is, as we move towards the Vata season. So Vata, the Vata dosha is related to the different body constitutions, but it's also more than that. It's more than just what someone's body constitution might be, but it's also related to the different seasons that we're in, the different times of life. So as we move into autumn and winter in Ayurveda, that is considered the Vata season, and that's the main constituents of the season is cold and dry. There's more than that. There's also the mobile quality, the light quality, but the big ones are cold and dry. So as we kind of move towards September, we want to start to really bring in a lot of moisture into the body and warmth. Although we are still going to definitely get some, warm days between now and the end of September, I'm sure, but we do have those cooler nights and those cooler mornings, which is starting to bring Vata and settling into the body. So with that said, I'm making a bone broth, chicken bone broth, and just a little plug for Many Hands Organic Farm for those of you that are currently ordering. I'm actually using last year's chickens. They sell the old layers, and they also sell chicken feet, and they're fairly inexpensive. The old layers are the ones that are retired laying chickens. You don't generally eat the meat, but they make a wonderful bone broth. So I'm getting prepared for the next couple of weeks and just drinking lots of bone broth, making lots of soup, and of course we'll definitely be talking about that a lot. But to bring in that moisture and that warmth, bone broth or broths in general are just a great way to do that. All right, so I'm going to throw my zoodles in to my boiling water. And so really you cook them to your liking of crispness. If you like it a little bit more crunchy, that's great. If you like it a little bit more soft, you don't want them too soft because they might just kind of be a little too mushy. So kind of an al dente style is likely how I'm about to cook mine. So as they cook, I will just see if I have anything else I want to say specifically about maybe just coming back to food combinations. I will be talking about that a lot as well. Ayurveda understands that although no food is bad, food combinations is a big part of what can help to over time let disease set into the body. When we're eating foods that are very difficult to digest and we're adding different foods within the same meal, that are difficult to digest, that just becomes a storm in the body that it can't digest at all, and becomes ama, which is basically toxins. So cooking with the meat tonight, as I mentioned in the beginning, and keeping it a little bit lighter with the zoodles rather than actual pasta. So even if I was eating pasta, I wouldn't typically mix pasta with beef in the meal, or even any meat in the meal generally, just to keep that lightness. And then I do have some quinoa. So generally speaking, with a red meat in particular, pasta and potatoes are really frowned upon mixing it with that food. So usually a rice or quinoa is a better option if you need some sort of grain or something else to go with meat, because they are lighter and easier to digest. With that said, as things cook together, one of the beautiful things in an Ayurveda, they believe in like one pot meals, because as we cook our different foods together, the more that and the longer that we cook them, the properties of all the different foods start to kind of play nice together and become a little bit more digestible. So with that said, making like the meatballs, cooking them together with the grain, it makes it even easier to digest because they start to meld together. So I'm thinking my noodles are pretty close to done. So all I'm going to simply do is strain that. And then I'm going to put it back in my pan. I'm just going to immediately put it back in my pan, put it on a really low heat. I have some lemon juice, just a little bit of lemon juice that I'm going to put on top. And then I'm going to throw in my pesto that I made a couple weeks ago. And really just turning the oven on, or the stove off at this point, just to let that gently heat with the pesto in it as it was in the refrigerator. And then I'm going to serve this up with my meatballs. So I guess that's all I want to share with you for right now. As I mentioned, every video will begin to have a little bit more information, about Ayurveda, especially around the seasons, the doshas, the different qualities of the seasons. So we will be talking about the Vata dosha and the Vata season, as well as the Vata stage of life, as we move forward in the next several weeks, because that's where we're headed. And that's learning really to seasonally cook is really helpful to balance all of the doshas through the different seasons. So just staying tuned for more information on the Vata dosha and more seasonal recipes. And I look forward to seeing you later. Bye.